The following is an excerpt from the popular best-selling underground book, The Black Matrix by Franklin Jones. Although the terminology of psychological warfare is a modern one, its practices among white cultures are not new at all. History affirms that the white race's tendency to deceive and perpetuate false propaganda has an ancient pedigree that lies at the very heart of European culture and identity. This was made evident during the Christian Crusades, when brutal white empires went into battle wearing crosses upon their armors, carrying a sword in one hand and a Bible in the other to convert their enemies into Christians, making them serve white deities that look like their European conquerors. In fact, the white race's proclivity for using the deceit and propaganda of psychological warfare dates back more than 2,000 years. Even the founding myth of the Judeo-Christian tradition centers on lies that have been used to perpetuate white superiority. There is perhaps no place where the white race's proclivity for deceit and propaganda is made more clear than in the history of Western religion, wherein white religious scholars rewrote the African origin of Christianity, thus having turned African religion, deities, and important figures of the Bible into European ones, regardless of how absurdly inaccurate. This white race's innate proclivity for racially rewriting ancient biblical history as white history may also be seen when examining the legitimacy of the white Jews of today's modern Israel. There is today an established fear of challenging the legitimacy of the white Jews because they now use their Holocaust as a tool of shame against anyone or group that would dare challenge or question their legitimacy and label them as anti-Semitic. This is being done to protect a heavily guarded fact and secret among white Jews. A secret in that the modern Jews, who are well-financed and extremely well-organized, are protected from established positions of power all over the world under the guise of protection from further persecution and protection of their image. They hide the truth that there exists no connecting lineage between today's white Jews and the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. The irrefutable fact is that the European Jews that now occupy Israel are in no way whatsoever the descendants of the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. Let us recall that the European Jews that now occupy Palestinian territory, that is Israel today, are the descendants of the surviving European Jews who, after World War II, were settled in modern-day Israel between 1945 through 1947 with massive financial support by the United States and the United Nations based upon an alleged 8,000-year-old prophecy of the promise of God Jehovah to the Jews for the founding of their own nation of Israel. The actual lineage of these European Jews of Israel today is limited, going back only as far as the Khazar Jews of Eastern Europe, whose ancestors merely converted to Judaism from the earlier pagan beliefs. The true descendants of the ancient Hebrews are Africa's black Ethiopian Jews, for unlike the European Jews, whose lineage is limited to Eastern Europe, therefore are unable to demonstrate a lineage connecting them to the ancient Hebrew of Africa, these black Ethiopian Jews' lineage can be directly traced back to the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. They have preserved their heritage and their stubborn belief in the Old Testament prophecy that one day they would return to Jerusalem. Their elders had said for more than 2,000 years that they were ones that came from Jerusalem and that one day we will return to Jerusalem. Scholars have found references of Jews in Ethiopia in Greek writings dating back 200 years before Christ, according to Ethiopian tradition. Moreover, the Bible classes the Ethiopian and Jews together. Are ye not as the children of Ethiopia unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Lord? Chaldea, the land in which the Jews originated, was also a Negro land. And in fact, as recently as 1940, the ruler of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, could trace his lineage directly to the Hebrews of the Bible. For Haile Selassie himself was the son of Menelik II, a direct descendant of Menelik I. Menelik I was the offspring of the union between the Queen of Sheba and Solomon directly out of the Bible. Similarly, Abraham was also black. When the state of Israel was founded in 1948, the black Jews of Ethiopia, calling themselves the Beta Israel or the chosen people, were more determined than ever to go back to their ancestral land. They wrote many letters to the white Jews in Israel, to America, and to the United Nations asking for help in migrating them to the land of Israel. They identified themselves as the factual and true Falasha Jews of Ethiopia, led by Queen Judith, who, through the bloodline of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba of the throne of Ethiopia, was an original Jew. For it was their birthright, after all, because the land had been procured based upon an 8,000-year-old prophecy where God Jehovah is said to have promised the land of Israel to the Jews, and these were black Jews of Ethiopia. However, there was no answer until 1973, 28 years of waiting. Take notice of the pertinent point here that while America and the United Nations felt that it was their moral obligation to invest millions of dollars and to procure territory making Israel a state for the European Jews, they ignored the letters of the black Jews for almost 30 years. Surely millions suffered and died within such a long period that their letters went unanswered. Even after a Marxist government assumed power in Ethiopia and began to oppress the black Jews of Ethiopia, the European Jews continued to ignore their many letters in spite of their persecution. Recognition of the Falasha as Jews had not happened until the 1970s, when after their persecution became widely publicized around the world, thus wounding the image of the European Jews, this humiliation led them to recognize and agree to help the Ethiopian Jews. Still, the white Jews refused to accept them as true Jews, but instead, separately, Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel accepted them as the seed of Israel of the tribe of Dan, which dwells in the mountains of Ethiopia. Therefore, accepting them as being sort of subordinate of the white Jews and not the original. It was on this basis that they were accepted as Jews, and then the U.S. and Israel put together a covert plan called Operation Moses to airlift these forgotten people to Israel. They then published many favorable propaganda stories within several newspapers and magazines and on television to demonstrating the kindness of the European Jews while concealing the brutal fact of how the cries of the Ethiopian Jews went ignored for almost 30 years. Even today, they are not treated as equals and live in separation from the white Jews within a designated area. This mistreatment of black Jews by the white Jews is not uncommon, for the black Jews of India are not permitted to enter the same synagogue as the white ones or to bury their dead in the same cemeteries.